Hello friends, today is going to be our first lesson on design, and it's also the first lesson in the Watilarium Eco-Home training. A summary of the last 12 years of R&D, sketching, drawing and building of my life. Basically the development of the Watilarium Cold Climate Eco-Home has been an incredible passion of mine, and I'm going to be going back and forth between slides on the computer and some sketches to show you some of the realizations. I've got a beautiful camera set up here. I'm going to be showing you the sketches and the details that I've realized over the time, and of course I'm going to show you the final drawing that we're going to be drawing in our 3D drawing class in Rhino 3D software. And that's the Watilarium that I've settled on as the final version of 2022 that we will be building this year, at least the first phase of it. I know there's still going to be much testing and of temperature probes underground in the berm, so I will get back to what I'm attempting to create with Watilarium, or what my vision is, but it's basically temperature stability. If I can just summarize it, that for now. I will be having a couple of slides that I've at the end of the presentation today that I will share with you, some of the other masters and whoever I'm kind of combining, as well as my own ecosystem that I've developed in Africa. In the meantime, let's just kick off with it. So, evolution of Watilarium by texture. So, the drawing started back in 2011 using tracing paper extensively for various components. So that's the kidney earthwormer, yeah? These are the little planters, like a strawberry planter, so it could have, the plants coming out that feeds on the earthworms. And of course I built this thing out of out of the IBC white tank, planning the tray at the bottom with all the wetlands and microgreens that are going to be growing there. And then using another tracing paper, you combine the two, yeah? Now, obviously you can't see the previous layer so much, but that's why you scan them individually. And in this case, I had to scan them because I had to match this with this. So just photographing them wouldn't work, yeah? Because scanning is exactly precise without distortions. So now that's getting my microgreens and the plants and everything else. The rainbow makers are everywhere. And then I have the outer layer of what it will look like on final on the outside. And that's really beautiful, you know. So you started to get an idea. I didn't incorporate it here. I could have with a semi-translucent effect in Photoshop, but I wanted to really show the internal dynamics. And then of course side view is one side of the story, but the top view is another side of the story. And as I mentioned to you guys, once you have the top view, so these are all the microgreen trays and little composters and wetlands and algae ponds, you know, and so on and so forth. These are little side planters that you guys can see on the picture. So even the sides of this can be fully, there they are, they're grown with plants, yeah? So once you've got the top view and the side view, and obviously this is all an extension of this, yeah, it's all matches. Okay, so once you got the top view and the side view, you have you can draw your 3D drawing in Rhino, because you just copy them. And you can make, that's why the pencil work is quite nice. You can add an effect that would be quite hard to do in 3D. So if you're presenting it to a client, or you want to do a meditative drawing or whatever, so these are really cool. I could have just drawn water, but I do a little spiral in it. Why not? You can be quite creative and helps you to enjoy, you know, what you're doing. And that's it. Then boom, here's the 3D render of this exact unit. Now, I never got to anywhere with the product, but I made a prototype and it fed my family, and it grew lots of food, and it was really fun. So, you know, being an inventor, you just carry on. You just carry on inventing and putting these things out there for the people to, you know, to take on and enjoy in their lives, or make money and make products. But I was inspired by the vertical garden ideas and the garden tower project, so I can't say I'm an inventor of this. It's really, we're standing on each other's shoulders here. This home is something I've built. I'm going to be showing you some construction photos of what I've attempted, but basically what we have is wetlands inspired by Earthships, intake of air from Buckminster Fuller that can create a nice cooling draft. Obviously it was built more for Africa. Tunnels, that tunnel, there is a side view section with creeping plants going out of the wetlands. The super adobe bags, these are the brown ones, as you can see, already inspired by Nadir Khalili and Cal Earth and all the work they've been doing there. In this sketch you can see the underground. Here it is. Here's a top side view, and here is a top view with like two little kidneys. So if you just look in here, it's basically under shelves that are underground, and this whole space is an underground space. Yeah, a home that has like a lung that provides fresh air into the home. So I always saw the homes to have this multifunctional spaces, multi-purpose, and not just multi-purpose, but providing fresh air, cooling themselves, heating themselves. So that's been a forever dream of mine. Here's some ponds, all based on Fibonacci spiral, of course, that there is in the background. Here's another side view of a home with an underground space. You know, there's a little ladder that you could climb down, a little cob stove with cooking pots, or some seats. So very much inspired, of course, by the geodesic dome. There is a tunnel going out. So already at the time I was working with Pacific Dome, so we would, you know, they developed these round doors, and I brought their domes to South Africa, so started kind of extending that out. You know, I worked with what I have. There's William Reich's organized cloud buster that could change the weather, and already the rainbow maker, which I'll get back to at the end of the slideshow, and of course my stretch spandex, which provides instant shade, and the decking on top of the dome. So yeah, it's what my dreams are. But for now, if you could just relate back to these two slides, keep them closely. Basically 5 trees, or one of them was going to be the oven, and then this fabulous rainbow spiral became the underground water sphere. I'll get back to that particular project, but for now, so back in 2011-12, I've started building after this is after attending the Colours workshop. I've combined the 3 domes together to a center one, and used a reptile skin. I had major mistakes. I'm not going to go into that right now. There is a film on our YouTube channel called Plaster Disaster. A donkey boiler with a drum and some colors bags, and 5 showers that I could feed at the same time with, you know, heat the water at the same time. Obviously the fire was under the drum, and there's some seats that you could stand on. So as you can see, the design was already taking shape. And then I've traveled with Mike Reynolds to Malawi. He came to Africa, which was fantastic, and I was responsible for doing some ferrocement. One of the pods, I was, you know, took the responsibility to build this ferrocement pod, and that's all due because of the first workshop that I attended in Mexico on ferrocement in 2007, and then back in 2011 I went to the Cal Earth Institute in California, and I took a 10-day workshop there, which was fantastic. So, and I also went to Towers for a seminar at Earthship Biotecture. So learning and building, and here I'm getting back to that design, and basically it was a dome in the middle of our half an acre or an acre garden, double dug, and also loads of mistakes there. All my topsoil eroded to bedrock because we double dug it and didn't plant fast enough. But this space actually did work. The wetlands worked. So and there's that spiral, the colorful spiral that's you know, it's actually became that geodesic sphere. There it is. It was a dream catcher at the in halfway, made of strong ropes, so you could climb in there. And actually, it was all very much fear driven at the time. Also, 2012 was on our nose, and then, you know, if the Earth would tend to move in waves, then myself and my ex-wife and my son, we could all climb into the sphere and, you know, basically survive the whatever was they're planning on. You know, it's all BS, of course, but whatever. So here's some rebar that we've placed into the sides that sculpted into a gutter with some geotextile and some waterproofing fabric. So there is the 5 spaces that was created in between these half pods. 4 of them were used to plant trees that were obviously all dry. They didn't need so much water like the wetlands. And then the others were filled with gravel, well, obviously plastic lined gravel, sand, and soil, exactly as per the Earthship methodology, the old botanical cells. So then a little table, already curves. We're starting with plywood. Love the curves. And there's the oven with 4 metal plates that I've put for that you could cook. So that was fully functional. I've basically, from that gutter outside that you saw, I've ran the water, so it could, there it is, through a 2-inch pipe that could feed the sphere, and then the overflow, so the whole dome doesn't overflow. You know, I had an overflow that would go out of the space. So, you know, and obviously the level of overflow controls the height of the water in your water tank. Prior to my Earthship, to going to the Earthship in Taos, I already started, you know, using the geodesic domes and combining the Cal Earth with the sandbags and the typical Earthship model. So I guess all of this was already being thought of and designed by Mike Reynolds, but, you know, this is my own take. With pencils, I was doing multi-layer designs that I could basically so that's the top view of this geodesic space, where I have again with sandbags creating a space for the wetlands. So the dome would sit on this ring, yeah, on this inner ring, and then these would be the outside, the aquaculture, the spirulina, all the different, the compost pile, the wormery, all the different things that one needs in a home. Definitely a worm bin and things like that. There's a bath, again sandbags on the sides, and there's a toilet, a compost toilet with a little basin. So, you know, using the curves, of course. A Russian oven made with a little bed. Really loved the little bed that could that you could lie on and warm your bones, and of course a little kitchen table with a sink and some shelves. So curves were like, I'm just obsessed by curvilinear design and sacred geometry. So here's another floor plan version with some tile work. Again, some steps that could lead into, you know, obviously you need to step up to get into the whole space. 4 trees, these ones, and then another table with a sink and a little water filter. So then reality took me back to the city, and we started building these things. So that's some of the first this is more, you could say, the second design that was taking me into Wattilarium construction. So here we got the wetland, there it is, we built it in front of the window. You know, I was planning a bath, which I didn't build it as a whole egg, but we did have a bath on the other side. I've got a free video on YouTube. Yeah, an entrance, played around with round openable windows and aircrete here, and a sandbag dome. So then that's the next design where very similar, but already with a buttress. That's and a buttress. I'll speak a lot about the buttressing in the design lecture, because it's a very important part. Every time you open a dome up, you need to buttress. Otherwise, the dome is the weakest point to, when you have a huge door that it can just blob out. A dome is only strong when it's fully complete. So something else I'll be talking about is whiskers. Whiskers is these two things going around. You see how huge this window is? 3 by 4 feet only on a 9-foot dome. So that's obscurely, not obscurely, but it's I felt it's just too big for the for the 9-foot dome. So it was disproportionately big. That's the word. So in a dome this size, you would have a 2-foot wide window by 3 foot high at most, and this is 3 by 4, 90 centimeters by 1.2 meters high, or something of that sort. So these are the two whiskers that created a buttress that went out of the dome, and actually, so because that window is so large, it almost looks like a door. So to support that from blobbing out and the dome collapsing. I've had one of these smaller domes, my first dome actually, because I didn't get the window right. My whole ceiling started to come down, and I had to shove a thick ball in there so the whole thing didn't collapse. So I even had those mistakes, but there it is, plastered, and that's the one in South Africa. Beautiful dome with round windows. You can play around with different windows, having round ones and having the square and an arc on top. Obviously, that's more cost effective because that's more available in most countries. And that in Ghana we built also a larger sandbag dome. I think it's close to 3.5-4 meters. And here, originally, these two boxes for these two windows were made also the same size as this, not 3 feet by 4 feet high. But what I've noticed, when they got to here, they were this big, and you can't see it because of this angle, but basically you got a window here and you got a window here, and they're nice and big for this size dome. Actually, it's a good size, but what happened is, as the dome curves in, the tops of the windows were almost 1.5 foot away. And the rule of thumb, which I'll be speaking about it at the design lecture, but the rule of thumb is that you have 3 feet between openings. So whilst they started at 3 feet at the bottom, I was like, yeah, that's good. I didn't accommodate for the windows for the dome curvature. So by the time the two tall 4-foot high windows, or 4.5 foot high windows, because you got 3 foot wide, so you have 1.5 foot high semicircle. Yeah, so it's 4.5 foot high. Whereas by the time they curve in, these windows, there's only 1.5 to 1 foot spacing. I'm like, no. So we cut those boxes by, I think, 1.5 feet, and made them more into like a square, square proportions with around the top. So you can't see it because I've taken a bit of an angle shot, but if you were to look in between those two windows, you would have seen exactly. It was really a disaster. As it is, you can see these windows are pretty large, and they were 1.5 feet higher. So that's how design is, and I'll speak in design in the next class actually, but do we want to be creative? Do we want to be safe? So that's the difference that we always have to play with. When I broke my foot, I think 2017, I think somewhere there, this is what I designed in the hospital, very much inspired by the School of Magic I was attending at a time, and quadrivium and trivium, and working with geometry and understanding the practicalities of sacred geometry and the history behind it. And this was very much inspired, so that the proportions of 1.618 to 1, so which is obviously, I'm not going to go, I'll go a lot into sacred geometry, but this bone, you can measure it now with a ruler and a calculator, is 1.618 times bigger than this bone. This bone is 1.618 times bigger than this bone. yeah, it's everywhere. So I thought, well, why don't we start designing homes like that? You know, whilst I respect the Earthship and everything I'm designing is very much inspired on an Earthship because of the cold climb eco home, but it's just too square. And you know, I want homes that are cozy, and that home in Africa, the sandbag and the aircrete, it was beautiful to stay in, really cool. So I thought, well, why don't we make proportions of you know, if you take 1.618 and multiply it by itself, 1.618 and multiply by 1.618, you get 4.235. You know, 4 meters 23 centimeters if you're working in centimeters. And I thought, well, if we have the foundation to that width, why don't we, you know, for example, times that by 1.618 and get the height? So the proportion of the foundation to the height becomes also 1.618. So why don't we just throw it in? If the entire creation is designed on this formula, you know, why not build our homes according to that? Half pods from Cal Earth. Obviously, this is more of a warm climate, so a bit of a bench. You know, you've got a nice space here. You've got another space here that you can walk in. Obviously inspired at the time by aircrete and the, you know, and super adobe and a bit of the ferro cement sculpting there. The calendar, which I'll speak of later, but I've started to have all these calendars on top of my homes so that we could, you know when to plant potatoes and when Mercury goes into retrograde. But we'll have a separate slide on that. Very much inspired by the idea of center and once again Cal Earth and repetition. What if we had vaults that, you know, that you could use one shape and move the shape for the roof, the form work, form work, and then you could use one form and move it along and sculpt the vaulted ceilings over that. So then a bit later I've started designing just some simple low-tech methods, and this is actually something similar to what we'll design at our drawing class as a first off, just to get our students warmed up and rhino. But also starting to play with interesting shapes, but obviously understanding this is quite hard to put together as such fabrics are not rarely available in third world countries. But be that as it may, here's a few aircrete dome topped up with colors, half pods on the ends, and all looking obviously now starting to look to the sunny side so the sun can enter. Yeah, so creating like a little bit of a abode in front. So starting to develop these cold climate eco home greenhouses. So somewhere around 2016, 2017, I've developed a new model for warmer climate, already with taking count into some greenhouses and earthships, but it's still very much designed, exposed out of the earth. So I called it the fifth element. And here you can see a vault sideways with 3 large openings and a nice greenhouse in front of it. A couple of colored domes. It's a new version of an Earthship for warmer climates that I'd really like to bring out there. And it was the transition stage as I was moving from South Africa to Russia, so I was still haven't overwintered here for a while, and now I'm thinking completely different. But be that as it may, it's a really lovely design that's some of you may get some inspiration and you know, build it for yourself. It's modular. You build one dome at a time and then you extend from there with a tunnel and into a main vault structure, or other way around. Then a Model T7 comes up, again starting to already refine the geodesic domes, large greenhouses, the Earthship wetlands on the outside. Still designing whilst I was living in Africa, so, and obviously understanding that this eyebrow would need to be extended longer for the shade in summer, and I would, you know, in obviously warm countries, make that not transparent. This is also a gutter that extends out to sandbag dome, so the sunlight shouldn't come in here, but it all depends what climate you're living in, because you know, Earthships design their windows to take in the winter sun on 21st of December. At the lowest angle, it comes at 90 degrees. You know, we'll discuss it in the design class, but Our sun in 21st of December is so low, it's 9 degrees. It's got no warmth, and it actually it doesn't even get above the trees. So for me to design the window for our December sun is useless. So after having a consult with Mike Reynolds, he suggested that I take the January to February sun. Depends when the sun comes out. Like it's overcast most of the winter, so unless it gets to minus 20 Fahrenheit, then the sun comes out. So, but whilst having my previous business of 3D Decor, already was prototyping these geodesic forms as that would be placed as greenhouses in front of our domes. So in T7 we basically have 4 colored half pods, or womb, the calendar once again, and the stars. Just I think my Russian thing. Don't take it personally. Yeah, actually, this talk about the star. Also, all the sides are based on sacred geometry. The length to the width. It's quite phenomenal. There's quite a bit of phi ratios in the star. Yeah, just that's what I was talking about, the angle. So there's my February sun. I'm not even considering December because it's not there, but February sun is at about 25 degrees off the horizon, so it's something that I can already accommodate. So starting to play with designing, with the sun, so the sunlight through the various geodesic triangles can come in at 90 degrees at different times of the year. It's something Mike Reynolds recommended I don't do, but I am developing a totally my own product and project and biosphere inspired by Earthship, but taking on way more north and way colder and far less sun than Taos, where his homes were designed. But I will be going back to this drawing at a later stage. I just wanted to show you the sun angles of February, March, April. June is already pretty high, so it's not going to even hit the back wall. So the proportion of this is how the design, the sunlight dictates to us the angle of, especially in a cold climate. If we make our rooms very deep, the sun will never reach the back wall, will never warm it up. So we want our rooms to be less deep or shallower and rather wider. That's why the Earthship is designed the way it is, and obviously the depth goes to the how far north you live. So less depth, the more north you go. So some skirts for the insulation, but we'll be hitting that in the design class more and of course in the Waterlarium class very deeply. So basically what we have here is a stepping down, is a T8 model with a stepping down garden. Here it is in the model. Model's a great way to figure out stuff. Like here in this model I figured out that, although I've got a beautiful 3D render with these sexy sandbags that just step in, by the time I started building it, those long shapes here, they started collapsing because the geometry is just not right. Whilst the geometry is right on the sideways, it's not, lancet arch. It's meant to be a dome. Now I've taken the lancet arch, made it a vault, and put my bags like this, and they just started falling in. So I realized that the last 3 feet of the roof has to be ferro-cemented or something, or bags going this way over formwork, which colors have done, but most definitely not the way I've designed it in 3D program. So the drawing, the pencil drawing, the 3D sketch, the model, they all teach each other. And then when we build the real thing, you get that's why I keep on building, even running workshops, because they teach me a lot. Yes, we make mistakes, we brainstorm them with students, and students come out with understanding of what not to do. But yeah, because we keep on pushing the boundaries. It's like Mike Reynolds as well. I mean, I made some crazy ass mistakes on Earthships before it's the Earthship global model 50 years later. Sideways we have a water tank here in the back. There it is. Some biochar filters. So you can see I'm starting to incorporate various elements of what we've done in Africa, with all the things that I've built, I've learned around the world, that I've teaching our Better water and dome class, all these things are basically starting to be implemented in the models that were built. And here is the first sketch that I'm going to be pulling out and actually showing you on the table. So what we have is a top view, yeah, of our Waterlarium biotecture. What I have here is the starting to develop the pipe work of the geothermal or the heating. So you got the tires, and then you've got the insulation around the back. And then you have a water tank. Between the water tank and the tires is also insulation, so the cold water does not, you don't lose your heat through that. But so basically, I'll be talking about insulation very deeply in, in the Waterlarium course. But just wanted to mention it. So we've got this mass of earth, okay, which you can see between on the side view, yeah, which is that. So these are tires, and that's the water tank with a domed vaulted ceiling, and then that 1 meter is is the mass of the earth that's behind the tires, and the insulation would be just on this wall of the water tank. So here's a water tank, and here's the root cellar, which is not underground. So we've got aircrete with large aircrete blocks. A little bathroom with bath, and so still using the curves of the kitchen with a kitchen counter, and underneath the counter is the 4 biochar, the 4 tanks for the biochar filter. We've got already the Earthship cooling. There is the pipework that comes in, and the one room is made with a flat roof. Here it is from the front. Yeah, that drawing is from the front. So a flat roof like Earthship style, and with the vigas and wooden beams and so on. And here's the like a shell roof that we've built in South Africa with ferro cement. Side view would be here with the greenhouse, using polycarbonate as a greenhouse, much cheaper. 2 dynaspheres, windmills there that are positioned on the the 2 sides of Eco Home. The whole design is made on Vesica Pisces, so it's basically 2 circles intercepting on the center points and going through the side, yeah. But basically you have a 1.618 proportion to the depth, 1 to 1.618. So again, sacred geometry. Let's look at the side view. So basically here's a slice through that. We've got a geodesic dome with a lancet art geometry roof. So the more sunlight can come through the top part. The concrete beam. Obviously everything is very practical. When I design things that can be built. That's very, very important. You can't just design pretty things. The internet is filled with pretty things. When I design things, there's the insulation, and you'll see there's more refinement. So there's the sandbags. Yeah, what's my scale? Scale is also very important, always to have in your drawing. There's my scale, 50 centimeters. Yeah, so one block is two of these blocks, 2 centimeters is 1 meter. Yeah, so the design you see on the screen is slightly different. So this was the first version with lots of domes, and this is also very cool, but for the warm climate. But you can see now these rooms, how they're going to take the sunlight, and then the sandbag wall on the front that's also going to heat up, and I'm changing this design again. So I've got various sections that allow me to see the home elevations, which is very, very important, because you need to have that, so you know what your home looks like. If you slice it through here, 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 and if you slice it through here. So, like for example, if I slice this here, my front view is looks something like that. Yeah. So there's my aircrete sauna, which is there. There it is on a sandbag foundation or stem wall. This is called a spring line. The spring line is the height of the dome before it starts curving in. And here is this room. Yeah, everything must make sense. There's a side, there's the end of it. Yeah, and then it's got a calendar on top. And this little guy, TQ, is a slice through that. Yeah, that's why a slice through that, you're only seeing a small section of the back of the room, and that's what it will look like of the sandbag dome. Okay, so everything makes sense. Tires are also the right size. We've got 75, one and a half, so 75 centimeters, so nice large tires for pickup trucks. So that's the I wouldn't even have a name for this one. Wattilarian Biotexture, as per the screen. Something else I want to mention before on this design. So in between the tires is this part is the compost heat exchanger with the heat exchanger pipe and the large Jean-Pain composting method. You know, the pipe work is obviously to channel this heat and to add additional heat from the compost into this berm. So this is how we're adding extra heat into our berm and heating up the mass. Here's the terrace garden in front of the dome from the previous design that I was showing you, and a thin pathway here to maximize the walkway. So these ones with the lines is the thin pathway, and then so these are some finer details that we're going to be refining in the latest build that we'll be doing. So different recycling station with some compost, earthworms with cans. Here's some a canned wall, and some aquaculture, 2 little ponds of aquaculture, one to breed and one to have actually fish in your home as well. So this is all so there's some more designs of it, just to show you. So curved greenhouse, large geodesic greenhouse, and obviously after the wall everything is buried under the soil with you know, EPDM liners, so it's all waterproofed and buried. So the wall supports it from the dirt, the earth falling over into the front of the greenhouse. The next design is Larry McQuell, and here's something I want to show you, a couple of more drawings. So, you know, things start with something small like, you know, that you could just get some basic ideas. You might not even use scale on something like this, but you get a vision, you quickly sketch it out, and I'm starting to plan a water tank underneath, like a reactor, with some heat exchange pipe work, some nature-inspired like stems, like a leaf stem with some heat exchange pipework, underneath the wetlands that can warm up the soil, because warm soil is, you know, is very good for production of vegetables. And so I'll be going into obviously greater detail, you know, cold air. So there's just some ideas. You're already starting to plan the winter air, the what happens in summer, what happens in winter, and actually it would be good for me to type that out. So as crazy as it sounds, the Wattilarium started with as simple as this kids looking ridiculous sketch. So, you know, but nevertheless, I'm thinking of the cold air that's going to be coming in, the hot orange air that's going to be warming up underneath my greenhouses, something happening in the reactor with the heat exchangers, something happening underneath the floor here and underneath the floor here, and obviously between the tires and the insulation. Yeah, there's my water tanks. And then, you know, you make some color markings of what this color means, and so that's my worked out air in this turquoise and my hot air in orange, as I mentioned. So then you know then you lay out some tracing paper, And yeah, you start to get more fine-tuned. You're starting to see, okay, am I gonna have these nature patterns? Then you get a bit crazy with the design, but then you come down to earth of what's the easiest way to take the hot air. And you'll see in the subsequent final Watellarium at the end of this first lesson, you'll see how I've taken the air. It's much simpler. There is two manifolds that run on both sides, and the air goes from one to another, just like on geothermal greenhouses. I'm starting to plan the piping in the reactor. I'm starting to plan the piping in wetlands, and of course the red one is this manifold on top of the greenhouse, top air duct. Yeah. And then you take it even further, and you know starting to fine-tune it, so you're starting to get more clarity. It's not so random anymore. Starting to plan the pipe work in the berm. Yeah, just everything I explained. Some from the top manifold on top of the wetland, on top of the greenhouse, right on top, just below where the earthships dump it. These are the top pipes, so you'll see it better from the side view, obviously. Fan, you're starting to plan your fans, air filters, so you could start filtering your air. Yeah, and then it changes over to something like this. Here's another, I'd say, semi-final one. Again, it's the fourth tracing paper. Again, you just get it, so that's now starting to look like that final manifold underneath my floor that I was speaking about. How is that going to coil in the mass, in the berm? How is it going to coil a spiral underneath the wetlands? What's going to happen with the end of the pipe? These little circles are the ends, so at that point it either comes up or comes down, or something needs to happen, with that air to move. Those are little, I'm using tracing paper quite extensively. Here's some really nice side view drawings of the Larry McQuell, and basically what we have here is a greenhouse that's, if you see on the screen, is more like flat panels or polycarbonate panels. There they are. And then you've got the curvy greenhouse that's I'll show you in the next paper sketch. But basically, again, allowing maximum amount of sunlight into the room. The back room is made of the back wall is made of tires with some IBC cheap water tanks. So really looking at low cost at 2-frequency geodesic domes, so very jagged 2-frequency. So 2-frequency means that from this pentagon to this pentagon, from the center to the center, is 1-2 pipes. Yeah, there they are. 1, 2. Can you see the pentagons? Yeah. So that's the 2-frequency. 3-frequency is less jagged. 4-frequency is more smoother, because the amount of triangles increases. But this is really, really simple. It's 2 sizes of pipes, A and B. And again, I've got this top part of the dome that allows sunlight to come in. If we look at the paper sketch, it's basically this part. So it allows the sunlight to come in, and so sunlight comes in through the dome and sunlight comes in through the top. But obviously that has its own problems, because now this makes the house higher. Bearing this whole thing as one unit will basically, it'll be exposed, and with insulation it'll still get very cold. You're going to lose heat in cold climate. So mild climate, sure, you can play with things like that, but I'm specifically going for really, 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 really cold climate, like Siberia, Canada. So for me, that is a problem. Pink is the insulation. Yeah, so you've got your tires, typical Earthship. You've got the insulation, obviously. The cold air pipe is insulated, because this is all warm. We don't want the cold air intake to be warmed up by the berm, so that's why it's also insulated, and you're going to see more of that later. At the end you've got a glass facade more at an angle with air coming out, so there the air it can escape. So typical Earthship, so cold air comes in, can escape through little flaps above your windows, above your door, glass facade above your doors, at the top, and then it can escape through this large greenhouse. It's basically an Earthship made with geodesic dome and interesting wall. So you can see the sandbags coming up to here, and then a beam. It changes to a concrete beam, which is something I've done in the underground water tank. Anytime you change over from one medium to ferrocement vaulted roof, you need to have a beam. Yeah, it's very important, because you have tensile forces pushing out and compression forces. So sandbag, your roof will just slide off the sandbags. You know, you need to put rebar and actually construct a beam that's going to create that in tension on top of your wall. Yeah, so here's some side view drawings. You can see how the pipe work is going underneath and allowing to heat up the botanical cell wetlands. So there's gravel, sand. Again, the wood is landed on the bag. There is insulation in red all around, showing the excavation, original excavation. So this will be what will be excavated. But obviously, I'm just touching on some different parts of what we'll cover in depth in the drawing class, and we'll actually be drawing this latest Waterlarium in the 2D and 3D drawing class. But and in Waterlarium course, I'll be going through all of this in detail and building this and recording everything on video. But basically, another interesting feature is the sauna. There is another drawing of it. Yeah. So here's a sauna with the reactor. So what we're looking at is this part is this sandbag reactor with a sauna in the center. So we have it made of aircrete. You have underfloor space, under the floor. You have there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be happening there. I'm showing basically there is a hot water boiler that's going to be from a heat exchange plate on inside the greenhouse. So on this back wall will be I'll be showing you from the top drawing. It's just there's so many drawings, but gosh, here is hot inside this greenhouse in the side. In this greenhouse behind these flat polycarbonate will be a heat exchanger plate that will be filled with water, you know, or some pipes in black that will take the sunlight and actually send additional heat to the boiler and underneath into the preheating the water, which is under all this compost. So basically it's compost between the sauna and the reactor walls. So basically in this space between the sauna and the reactor walls, full of compost. So just the message to take home is the air is going, heating the berm, which so basically the Earthships dump their heat. We're going to be taking the heat and heating up the berm. Here's the insulation to make sure that warmth stays in there, and here's the final burial. But I'll be showing you more designs, refining this. So top view, there's some preliminary designs, you know, a duct, for example. There is a duct that will take all the hot air from all the greenhouses, this pink one. Yeah. Not gonna go too much into this, but you guys are getting this. So, you know, it's insulated underneath. That's something we're going to be doing in cold climates. It's something I've been wrecking my brain. But I think insulating underneath is very, very important, because the ground is here is 6 degrees Celsius. Yes, it's plus 6 degrees Celsius. It's not like minus 20. It's an outside air. But still, this plus 6, whilst we're heating this to plus 20 Celsius, we're going to be losing our heat to that. So not necessarily foam insulation, something much cheaper, such as some pumice or some stones like a volcanic origin, but definitely separating ourselves from the ground. A nice skirt with insulation, a pond that will allow sunlight at an angle to come in, and obviously it won't get in here because that'll be too much of an angle, but as the sunlight comes in, it will bounce into our greenhouse. So obviously there's more refined drawings. These are all over the years what I've been drawing. This is 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago. So that's the side view of this heat exchanger that I was sharing with you. Yeah, insulation on top, obviously. Here's a side view of the whole home, so allowing the insulation and showing the burial. So you've got insulation zone and insolation, so separating the insulation from the outside elements and creating more temperature stability. Obviously then you move to tracing paper that allows you to do some final refinements and planning. Tracing paper is very cool. We're going to be working with it in the in our course, in the drawing course. But here's the ties. Gives you opportunity to refine the wall, to increase the space a bit, to do some final tweaks, and so on and so forth. So tracing paper is super cool. And here's this the top drawing. Something I wanted to show you. Coils made out of these black thick pipes, 4-inch pipes, and they're already coiled and glued together. So I'll be using, there they are. I'll be using them as a heat exchanger. A side view of the home with a sandbag room and an aircrete room, just showing the bricks, and once again the skirting. So it's all repetition. So very important to count. I use a bending ruler or some other tool that I roll across, and I can see that this is 3 meters. So you're not just only designing, because polycarbonate comes in 6 meters. So if you design this being 350 for 3 meters 50, you're losing the rest of the 250 that's left over. So when you design things that are either using half a sheet or a full sheet, of polycarbonate, because you want to minimize wastage. Yeah. So we'll be going through this in detail in our class. It's just a kick-starting of where we're going with this. So Larry McQuall, back to the screen. Designed polycarbonate, changes from straight to the 45-degree angle. And there's a reason why I'm going with a 45-degree angle. It's due to biogeometry. What we've got here is a tiny microsis. So I thought, the hell with it, stop drawing, start building. Let's get something small, buildable, up and going. And, design this under 200 square feet, excluding the greenhouses. Again, the greenhouse now follows the geometry of the geodesic dome. You can see these lines here, the 2 frequencies. So that's, the next version of Larry McQuall. Basically I have a sandbag room, be it a sauna or be it whatever, another little fancy shaped room. The reason for these curves, I try to get it under 200 square feet. Here's a side view of it and a top view. So the reason for these side walls, is to keep up the burial. So it's all going to be buried behind. And using this drawing, I was able to obviously these will be eventually sold once they're tidied up and provided to a proper set of blueprints, but using this drawing I know all the distances from, also the way you design. You see this 45-degree changeover, so this line is 22.5 degrees to this line. So using that, then that's the center of the dome. Can you see? So then once you've got this line 22 degrees and a half, you can then, once you've got the 45 degree in the middle of it, you basically have the center of the dome straight away. So you try and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And then there it is drawn on the ground. Here's some work I've been doing during 2021. working at like 3 hours a day, and not every single day. Zoe and myself just dug out the foundations, and the bags are very slow. I think I'll pour the foundation next time. It's obviously all cost versus time and versus you know, the availability of finance, but I was trying to do it like very, very cost effective. It cost me nothing. The bags are so cheap. The tires I collected myself and pounded, but it's you know, it did take me the whole summer to finish the foundation, or you know, designed a little unit that I could build myself. Action is very important. And then at the end of last year, 2021, I was asked to go to Brazil, so I developed a tropilarium for warm climate. Again, a wetland here, a walk-in shower, spiral shower with a water tank. So again, you can see how I'm incorporating everything I've built over the years into like one home as an ecosystem. So here is some shade and water catchment over the dome, because you want to catch your water as high as possible. So your water tank can be as high as possible. So then if you know, if your pumps break, you have water on gravity, versus if you've got underground water tank, you have to like get buckets in or have some form of a hand pump if your pump breaks. So everything is designed with purpose. So we've got a ferrocement seashell room, and aircrete dome, and a vault with a geodesic. And I've learned a lot on this project, because design and then you got reality. The connection, for example, for the geodesic was very, very rough, and guides would be very important when you build it in reality. Guides is something you have as like a wooden stick that is at the right angle, so you know that your geodesic dome is going to be landing at 60 degrees, because those triangles are 60 degrees. So you have a wooden stick next to the wall that you're building, and you basically follow the guide precisely with your sandbags, you know, keeping maybe 2-3 inches, 2 inches away for the final plaster. But without guides, the wall becomes wonky, because somebody puts the bag a bit further out, somebody puts the bag a bit in, or the whole bag, you know, nobody's keeping to the 60 degree. So, you know, by the time we build, we realize that we're like 2 feet away, and this vault was going to be hanging in mid-air. Another mistake I made, I think the biggest mistake I made, is I never created a side view, which I'll be showing you in the design class. But, you know, a side view of this would be, you know, seeing that I've got a vault that will start off here, you know, and end here, and there was a geodesic here. I'm just going to do a quick thing, and a sandbag dome that starts off here. Yeah, so we had a sandbag dome that does that thing, and we had a vault, and we had a geodesic dome right here. Just a rough sketch. Yeah, and at here we changed over to bricks, which is, and here I changed over to ferrocement. That's one thing I'd never do, is I'd never have two different materials. So you can see on the screen, there's the ferrocement roof, and here's the bricks we're starting. So it's too many connections. But now because I never did a side view, I just like did a top view, sent it to the client, and then did a render. And I never, because when you draw from sides and sections and left and right and elevations, you start to see the problems before you build. So when I got to site, I realized that 3 feet of sandbag dome is going to be sitting on the bricks, on aircrete bricks, and aircrete bricks are very light. They're like foam. You can't have 2 tons of mass pushing onto aircrete bricks. You can have aircrete pushing onto the sandbag, but you surely can't have a sandbag wall pushing onto aircrete. No, we had to lower this dome down, and then we had to raise the vault up, so the sandbag dome, as you can see from the top here, you know, basically there you can see the sandbag dome pushes onto the sandbag wall of the backing of the vault. So basically the top of these bags are pushing onto the sandbag part. So sandbag on sandbag, Yeah, so nice and strong because you've got the back curvature of the vault and you've got the dome, and they're both sandbag and they counteract the forces. Versus, what would have happened in reality is on these flimsy aircrete bricks, this whole sandbag dome or 1 meter of it would be pushing, which is a lot of weight. So that's why this vault is gone so high. It really raised it by 2.5 feet high. And then we get back to Watilarium. So this is something I did already last summer,